Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Saladino.
We shall never find that lovely land of might have been. I can never be your king, nor you can be my queen.
Screen Rant lowered Black Myth Wukong's score after a female journalist criticized the game for not including female characters and for the monkey's supposed lack of diversity. She then attacked the developers over false allegations. It's time to outcast feminism in video games. So this is their summation here. Black Myth Wukong gets 3 out of 5 stars. The pros are combat is fluid and fun. Cinematography can be breathtaking at times. Great diversity in items and mechanics. The cons are game performance is unpolished, lacking in inclusivity and diversity. Gameplay becomes repetitive over time. One of these things is not like the others. Now, if you actually read the article, it's even worse than this. Worse because Screen Rant and the writer, Samar Abedian, I believe that's how you pronounce it, they went out of their way to screw up an otherwise perfectly fine review. I think the review overall is pretty good. There's actually no reason for it to be controversial at all, even with the final score being a 3 out of 5. Like, if you play the game yourself and you don't agree, that's fine. But the justifications that the writer makes seem fine. They seem plausible why you would say, well, there are good things about it, but I have issues, and I'm not going to reward it a higher score than this. But SJWs, cancel pigs, they can't help themselves. This article is a case study in woke. It's the perfect example of why men don't want women, for the most part, involved in their hobbies and activities, especially feminists. They kill the mood because they don't know how to act. All Abedian had to do was talk about the game, what she liked, what she didn't like, what she thought worked, what she thought didn't work. And again, whether or not you end up agreeing with her after playing the game yourself, I really do think she does a good job explaining where she's coming from. But her being a woman and a feminist, she had to fuck it all up by making it about her. Women are never going to be taken seriously as gamers as long as they keep othering themselves. And this is something they love to say. You're othering me. If you say that as a man who's married and an influencer, you don't want to spend time alone in a room with a woman, you're saying I'm nothing but a inherently sexual creature, and you're othering me by putting me behind just my sexuality. And what I think is so funny about that, like the whole ninja thing, and that one chick, I think her name was something Cogswell, where she was like, you're just saying that a woman's presence is just naturally sexual, and you don't want to spend time alone with me. But it's like, if someone did not think of her as inherently sexual, she'd lose her mind. In 5-6 years time, she's going to be interviewed somewhere talking about how she's invisible to men. So whatever. But anyway, they love to say you're othering us, but women are never going to be taken seriously as gamers or geeks in any of these hobbies as long as they keep othering themselves by talking about things that don't matter. This is a hobby. You're an activist. Stop writing about a hobby that's more about escapism if you care more about your political agenda. These may be important issues that need to be addressed, but gamers aren't the ones who are going to address it or even care about it. They're there to talk about video games, not game science's feelings about women. What do you realistically expect gamers to do anyway? Do you expect them to go to China and beat Fangji up? Yeah, Fangji is he's one of the co-founders or co-CEOs of game science. What they expect is gamers to boycott game science. But you'd think by now these idiots would realize that that's not going to work. Again, this is a hobby, and it's a male-dominated hobby at that. You're not going to get men to care that a company of, male devs don't want women around, or they like to make crude jokes. And anyway, the biggest issue with this so-called controversy is that nobody believes it. We know IGN's original article was a hit piece that deliberately mistranslated comments made by the studio. And not only that, the comments, even at their worst, they were just crude and lewd. Like I said, it's just dumb feminists mad at men for being men and thinking that just because they're women, all they have to do is tell everyone how offended they are and the world is going to stop for them. Black Myth Wukong Review. The Souls-like action hype train is a little off rails. By Samar Abedian. This is Samar.
Hey, how you doing?
And the role of the Destined One, Black Myth Wukong, which is for the kids, takes players on a cinematic story-driven experience in an action RPG based on an adaptation of Journey to the West, using dynamic combat skills to defeat formidable enemies, cunning spirits, and the mythic Yao Guai. Players traverse through breathtaking landscapes from lush forests to towering mountains and mystical temples. While there are elements of great design by developer Game Science, engaging narrative and varied boss fights especially, Black Myth Wukong also presents issues that can severely impact the gameplay experience and reliability of the game. Taking into account its controversies with the current modern gaming audience and expectations of Souls-like games, whether Black Myth Wukong lives up to its hype is questionable at best. Everything was fine up until taking into account its controversies with the current modern gaming audience. She had to go there. She just had to. She just had to go there. She knows gamers hate the term modern audience, but she still put it in there. I always talk about cancel pigs and their lack of self-awareness, but thanks to Sweet Baby Inc.'s Chris Kindred and Kotaku's Alyssa Mercante, they can no longer pretend that they're not aware of what gamers think about their bullshit buzzwords. Abedion has to know enough to know that saying modern audiences will kill the integrity of the article with gamers. But with that lack of self-awareness, I guess she figured it was more important to virtue signal in front of her fellow hated colleagues instead of allowing her genuine thoughts about the game to stand on their own. Because now it's not just that you end up with a 3 out of 5 score that's probably already going to have gamers thinking that you did it because you're a woman, but you're out and out telling them in the pros and cons section under the damn final score, it's lacking in inclusivity and diversity. Talk about an own goal. So, okay, in the article she writes, a cinematic masterpiece with poor performance. Cinematography and graphics try to carry the weight to varying levels of success. In its optimal settings, Black Myth Wukong is a cinematic masterpiece, with stunning and captivating visuals that truly immerse you in its world. It has achieved high amounts of detail and beauty in the mundane, as well as its vast landscapes. From the reflections in rippling water to capturing the veins in every single tiny leaf of flora surrounding you, it's a shame that, due to its appalling performance, it isn't possible to see and appreciate these visuals. These fatal flaws consist of frequent stuttering, severe lag, desynced audio, and terrible frame rates. Aside from the frustrating amount of stuttering, the frequent cutting of audio also heavily impacts your experience, especially during boss fights if you're relying on audio cues. With the recommended specs for the game that should allow for optimal performance, many areas from Chapter 2 onwards are entirely unplayable and become only marginally better when on the lowest graphic settings. As it is currently, unless these issues are subject to change in an upcoming patch, I don't see many players being able to run Black Myth Wukong if it is this problematic on the recommended specs. Should Game Science fix these issues, it would certainly change our final scoring. Now, to me, not having played the game, this sounds like valid criticism and a valid reason to ding it in the final score. I've seen review roundups where a lot of reviewers have mentioned the poor performance and the bugs. So that sounds fine. And in this article, she goes on to praise the combat. But after that, she has another critique. Black Myth Wukong does not make use of its environment. Hugely lacks mobility and environmental movement. While Black Myth Wukong did a beautiful job of creating an immersive and stunningly captivating environment with vast landscapes, the main criticism lies with its interactive limitations. The majority of the landscape cannot be utilized, limiting players' mobility and maneuverability while exploring. Considering that the Destined One is a monkey, Black Myth Wukong missed a wealth of opportunities and exploration that would have transformed the game into a much richer and fun experience when it comes to mobility and movement. The inability to use the terrain to your advantage and demonstrate parkour abilities is a huge shame when the world appears to be so interactive. The restriction of movement makes gameplay fairly linear, in which the environment purely serves as a means to get from place to place with pretty views of the background. Chapter 2 does provide a much more explorative and open space, feeling more like an RPG. but it is still fairly vacant, and the destined one's lack of maneuverability and mobility is all the same, but in an expanded landscape. On the surface, there's a lot more to see, but instead, the environment makes it far more tedious to get to certain bosses while being unable to traverse them properly. Again, this seems legit. This sounds like valid criticism. And she goes on to talk about how boss arenas are equally shallow. Moreover, bosses also don't seem to use their environment very much. She talks about two that does. While Ling Zhuzi does jump atop the roofs of some surrounding buildings, it is just so that he can gain the high ground before lunging at you, which isn't a move that is unique to how the environment can be used effectively. However, white-clad Noble uses his environment more effectively, dipping in and out of the water and utilizing it in his inherent attacks. Initially, I thought that players could take advantage of the environment by seeking protection from surrounding structures, but this feature seems to be inconsistent. Sometimes a large rock or boulder can block incoming attacks from bosses, while at other times this won't work, marring the experience and making fights frustrating. Fine, I get it. She also talks about environmental choices not working. Another problem with Black Myth Wukong's environmental design is its placement of shrines. These vital rest points are inconsistently placed, showcasing a lack of consideration and strategic thought in how players can most effectively travel. Black Myth Wukong artificially pads its runtime out by introducing unnecessary convoluted challenges between shrines, often placing them extremely far away from boss fights while you must face enemies along the way. This results in players entering these confrontations with reduced health or skills under cooldowns, having used them in previous encounters. Now, that genuinely sounds frustrating and annoying. That's the kind of thing I hate. And I've noticed that Chinese games seem to do stuff like that. Very irritating when they do that. Again, this sounds legit. It sounds like genuine criticism. She talks more about the shrines. She talks about how it makes the difficulty wonky. Because overall, she says it's not that difficult a game. It really is a shame how women, SJWs, cancel pigs, feminists, how they ruin something that started out so well, or how they stop you from allowing them to be appreciated for what they're doing. People have mentioned this before. Other YouTubers have mentioned this before in movies or comic books where they'll have a female character do something cool or badass. And instead of just allowing the viewer or the reader to just appreciate that and just sort of sit with that trauma, to just sort of sit with that and go, wow, that's cool. This person is cool. I like that. They have to now tell you how great this person is, or have somebody else tell them how great they are, or have them tell you how great they are and make a big show of how bad and amazing this person is. And they kill it. They kill the vibe. Instead of just letting the reader or the viewer come to the conclusion that, hey, this character's pretty cool. She's a badass. I like this girl. They start telling you, you better like her, or you better fear her, or you better feel less than. And they ruin it. And that's what I think she did in this article. So I'm reading this article. If I didn't realize what I was reading, I would have been like sucker punched by this bit right here. Largely lacks inclusion and representation. Black Myth Wukong characters lack diversity. While my analysis and review of Black Myth Wukong remained focused on gameplay, it's important to mention the controversy surrounding the game's studio and the reports of misogyny and sexism from developers. Playing as a female gamer allowed me to notice issues surrounding inclusion and representation. No, it didn't. Playing as a feminist and buying into this agenda, especially with IGN already putting out this hit piece, and the whole point of the hit piece was to help foster this feminism in China. That's their whole goal, is to push feminism in the East. That was the point of attacking game science. But not only just because of that, but because they hate gamers in the West, and they know that gamers in the West are turning to the East for games that eschew the BS agenda that's in Western games. For her to ruin her article, which she sounds like a legit gamer who is sensitive and perceptive to the issues of the game she's playing, and then she has to step on a rake, hurt her own credibility, hurt her own demonstration of game knowledge and writing talent by putting in this bullshit. Nobody who plays games, male or female, play it for inclusion and diversity and representation. She goes, as far as chapters 1 and 2, while characters are clearly fictitious and fantastical creatures, there were no female or feminine NPCs, enemies, or bosses present. The fact that she, as a woman, says, as a woman, I need this in a game, is the perfect reason why women shouldn't be in this hobby? Like, why would you think men would want you to be in this hobby if you know it's largely male dominated? Like, as a woman, and you're saying, I'm playing this game, I need to see women in order to feel like I belong. Then you don't belong. Again, you're othering yourself. We're not othering you. I said this before. When it comes to women in male hobbies and male spaces, I think that women are welcomed, but they're not necessarily invited. And this is why. She goes on to say, the only exception, if you can call it female, is a boss named Mother of Stones in Chapter 2, which is nothing more than a still, glowing rock with no abilities being guarded by other enemies. The lack of diversity and inclusivity resonates with the misogynistic comments reported to have been made by developers, which expressed disdain for women playing their games. That's not what it did. I know that there was some quote from one of the developers at Game Science that said basically the quote was just to the effect of, a lot of women don't have skill for this. They don't have interest in this. We're making this for men. Why do we have to do things that would appeal to women when mostly women aren't even going to play these type of games? Although Black Myth Wukong does have truly enjoyable moments, the underlying feeling that women aren't welcome in this world felt present throughout my gameplay experience. Again, if, as a woman, you need to see women in a game to be a part of this hobby, then maybe the hobby isn't for you. Maybe women don't belong. So she goes on. It's worth noting the game is based on the novel Journey to the West, which does consist of a few important female characters. To not include any women, or to only include a few in an adaptation meant for a modern audience is quite disconcerting. The fact that this clown, this article gets worse and worse and worse, and it's a shame because it started out fine, besides that one dumb thing in the first paragraph or two. But for her to actually say, again, modern audience, she knows nobody believes in this modern audience thing. And the fact that she's so stupid that she would say that Game Science is making a game for a modern audience when the whole narrative around this studio was that they were misogynists and they hated women, then clearly they weren't making a game for modern audiences, because she said herself that they said women are not welcome in playing their game. She's full of shit. It's so stupid. While this doesn't take away from the exhilaration and fun of boss fights themselves, women fans of Souls-like games may have a different perspective. No other woman's going to have this perspective, especially given that, according to reports, the developer also suggested that women aren't capable of enjoying or being skilled at these type of games. That's a lie. That's not what they said. They said typically they're not. The irony behind this sentiment is that Black Myth Wukong is among the easiest of Souls-like games, and may have overestimated its ability to hang with them in terms of difficulty. No, I remember someone saying that. They said, it's Souls-like, but it's not going to be that difficult. We want it to be more accessible to a lot of players. While thematically and stylistically, it undoubtedly falls under this category, it does not quite fit the bill in the technical skills required. Good. Because I'm still trying to get my technical skills up to that. I always say I'm a hardcore gamer with casual gamer skills, such as is achieved by games like Elden Ring, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, and many more. So then she goes on, Black Myth Wukong review score, a 3 out of 5. Very good. 3 out of 5 is not very good. 3 out of 5 is good. I told you the scale. I know some people seem not to understand this. 1 is poor. 2 is fair. 3 is good, which is good. That's fine. 4 is excellent. And 5 is superb. It's classic. It's a masterpiece. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have flaws. It just means this is the highest score I can give it. Okay, very good by Screen Rant's review metric, despite its flaws, worth trying. God. With the potential to have been one of the next best Souls-like games in portraying a beloved cultural gem of a novel, Black Myth Wukong, which is for the kids, missed many opportunities and has inherent issues that must be addressed and fixed to be considered a serious contender of other Souls-likes. Should this be the case, I would bump the score up to 3.5 at least. So all this nonsense she talked about earlier in the beginning, when she said, if they fix the performance issues, I could bump up the score. But she says that bumping up the score for her is a 0.5. That's insane. And so she hurts her credibility because she made it about being a woman, and she made it about this narrative, this agenda, this hit piece against Game Science that she's parroting and pushing. While it has some exceptional features, including its visuals, combat design, and many extraordinarily exhilarating boss fights, as well as a compelling plotline, it is not enough to warrant a better score. Given that most of its shortcomings lie in performance, diversity, and wasted environmental factors that would have transformed it into something great. These are integral features that, at a fundamental level, all RPGs especially Souls-like ones, should encompass in their content. That is insane. She said diversity. No game should have to worry about diversity. That's not a metric to score a game by. And for her to end her article this way by saying that diversity is an integral feature to it, all RPGs, is absurd. It's not an integral feature of any game. It's cool when it's there, when it's done right, but it doesn't need to be there. People don't go to these hobbies to see themselves. They don't go to it for representation. They don't go to it for an inclusion. You include yourself because you care about the medium. You care about having fun. You want to get away from things. And different types of games require different types of elements. And it's just stupid for her to do this. And it's so funny. It's like they did this on purpose. It's that thing where, like, on the one hand, I feel like, the lack of self-awareness and virtue signaling for your colleagues. But on another hand, it's like, how do you do something like this? Saying things like inclusion and diversity in modern audiences when you know gamers hate that. And everybody's paying attention to you for this review because we all know what the story around Black Myth Wukong is. Like, they know because IGN, people are like, wow, IGN actually gave it an 8 out of 10. And it's one of those things where they go, oh, because of the bugs. That's why we couldn't give it a higher score. But still, it's one of those things that they had to be aware of that. If they gave it anything less, people would have said it's because of the hit piece that they put out. Not only that, though, they made a point of not mentioning any of the controversy, the fake controversy they created in the review, which is smart. I did a video when they did their review of Hogwarts Legacy, and in the video, at least, the video review, they didn't mention boycott at all, which was great. All she had to do in the Screen Rant article is just write her review and leave it at that. But she ruined it. And then to further victimize herself, and Screen Rant helped do this, they do this stupid thing where they take her name off the article for safety reasons. When nobody, people are dragging her, but nobody is going after her. Now, safety in this case probably just means people dragging her online and making fun of her. You talk about harassment, but if you put out something in public, you should expect people to clown you for it. It's dumb all around. On the one hand, she's showing that she's a gamer who likes games, but on the other, she others herself by making herself into a woman and saying that as a woman, because this game doesn't have a lot of women in it, I now feel like I'm not welcome into games. That's stupid. Nobody else asks to be invited to games. They just come to it, play it, do their thing. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they move on. But they don't stop and go, make it all about me, or you're the problem.
Shimmering, cold and I can be all you ask of me. Music in spring, flowers for a king, all these I bring to you.